Good evening, welcome. My name is Puk van Dijk. I'm your moderator. There you go. I'm your moderator for tonight. I just wanted to start off, before introducing the program for this evening, telling you a little bit about this big soccer-playing elephant in the room. His name is Ajax. And that's also probably why some of you are a bit late or not here. Hello, people who are not here. Because there is an alert from the public transport that the city is full and people should stay home. But you are here, so that's great to see. Good to see you all here. This is actually the new logo and the old Ajax logo, which I will tell a little bit about in just a second. For those people who are here, but are also a little bit in their hearts with Ajax, can I see your hands? Ah, there you go, there you are. There is an opportunity for you guys after our program to see the rest of the match right here in Pakhuis Zwijger. Who is like, no, I just want to hang out and talk more about this evening and not watch the match. Not at all, I don't care. Go away, stupid soccer people. Yeah, okay, great. So it's like 50-50, okay. Just a quick bridge to tonight's program. The new logo that you see here at on the screen, Ajax logo, is actually made by a former total designer, André Toet. And that is exactly what we're going to talk about this evening, amongst others, about total design for the Insiders TD. I will walk you through the program tonight, tell you a little bit about what It's All Graphic is about. It's actually our first edition, so it's a premiere tonight. And tonight we're going to talk about the Dutch graphic culture. We like to see our program as a live magazine, which we will flip through time and different people and different focus points. The series will be twice a year, so the next It's All Graphic will be somewhere in the autumn. We will keep you posted on that. And it's basically a co-production between the Wim Crouwel Institute and Pakhuis Zwijger, in which both parties want to connect the history of graphic design to the topicality of today by programming as well as old masters and young designers working in today's top agencies. Today, this evening, we will have a panel talk with Paul Mijksenaar, Wim Verboven, Sonja Greven, Arlette, Brouwers and Joost Klinkenberg. And they will reflect on their time together at the Total Design Agency. After which, we will listen to 3 international young designers who will share their work and experience as foreigners working in the Dutch graphic design world. And we will ask them to reflect a little bit on how they see, from an outsider's perspective, the Dutch graphic culture as a whole. Before we do all that, I would like to ask Rob Huisman to the front, who is the chairman of the Wim Crouwel Institute. And he will introduce the institute, but also give a little bit of context on this evening. So please, a warm applause for Rob Huisman.
Yeah, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's nice that you are all here. I was expecting half of it when I heard the alert of the tram and things like that. And I'm now chairman of the board of the Wim Crouwel Institute for, I think, 1 year. And what we want to do is to connect the present, the past and the future of graphic design. And we do that mostly unseen to the public. And that's the reason that we thought it's nice to do twice a year an evening like we do tonight, where we talk about the profession of graphic design and what's happening and what we can learn from that. And another thing, what we do is, for instance, is the Wim Crouwel lezing, the Wim Crouwel lecture. We do it once a year. We planned this meeting at the beginning of this year, and we thought that the subject, it was good to talk about and to talk with Ben Bos, the founder of the Nederlands Archief Grafisch Ontwerper, what is now the Wim Crouwel Institute. And when we were all busy preparing that evening, Ben Bos suddenly died. That was a shock for all of us, and especially for the design community. For Ben was not only a brilliant designer, it was also a wonderful man, and what I said before, the founder of the NAGO, and a lot of other things in the design field. Ben was also one of the founders of Total Design, and I think you will hear a little bit more about it tonight. So tonight it's a little bit it's not a little bit, it's a lot in honor of Ben Bos that I'm standing here, and I really respect very much what he did for the time when I was managing director of the Association of Dutch Designers. He was an honorary member also of that association. So that's a little bit about tonight. When you entered, you found, I think, a publication called Roots. If you didn't take it, you can take it when you leave. It's a publication where the Wim Crouwel Institute cooperates with Zo Production and Wilco Art Books, in which every cahier is on a special graphic designer. And the latest one is about Swip's talk. It's a very interesting publication. So please take it. So I really hope you have a wonderful evening. And I expect that Ajax will win, I think.
Thank you so much, Rob. Applause. Thank you. Now it's time for me to introduce to you our panel for tonight, the people from Total Design. So can I please ask you to enter the stage, take your seat, and when you're seated, I will introduce you guys. Give them a warm applause. And since maybe some of you know these people, but some of you probably don't, I will kind of give a who's who by walking by them and introducing them. And I will just start. Oh, well, I will start with you, Paul. This is Paul. You can sit here. Sure. And Paul, we'll just stand here. This is Paul. Paul started working at Total Design in 1978 as a senior designer and a team leader. Then over here is Wim. Wim Verboven. He was a designer and later a senior designer at TD from 1974 until 1992. So. Right? Yeah. And this is Joost Klinkenberg, who started working at Total Design in 1980 as a graphic designer. Then, over here, we have Arlette Brouwers, who started working at Total Design in 1978 as a project leader. And finally, we have Sonja Greven, who worked at TD between 1979 and 1982 as an executive secretary. And at Total Identity later on, between 1986 and 2008. Welcome. Great to have you here. I will also join the panel, but Paul will lead this. So Paul, take it away.
Speaking English and for a short time, it means that I have to write it down, which is a little ugly, but that's what it is. Okay. Tonight we'd like to discuss the following topics, and then the answers will be given by the ex-Total Designers. The founding of Total Design was dictated by plural motives. First was to establish a solid design firm that could compete with the foreign, especially British agencies like Pentagram, Henrion Design Research Unit, who already worked for Dutch corporations like KLM Airlines, and Albert Heijn supermarkets. All clients who don't like the risk to work with solitary designers. As Henrion expressed it, institutions like to talk to institutions. So total design had to become an institution, not a bunch of individual designers. Second was the idea to offer complete design packages, like corporate identity design, interior design, graphic design, product design. In other words, total design. The initiators in the middle of each panel are here on photo, not all of them, but the brothers Paul and Dick Schwartz. I think I have to see Dick Schwartz. They're not all here, eh? Oh, they're all here. Okay. Yeah, they're all here. Dick Schwartz, you can see a little behind the lamp, eh? Behind the table lamp. Okay. Well, this was the beginning of total design.
Friso Kramer on the left.
Yeah, Friso Kramer, and then Ben, and then
Benno Wissing.
Benno Wissing, Paul Schwartz,
and Wim Crouwel.
and Wim Crouwel with black hair.
Yeah.
In that time.
Never seen
Yeah.
No one's called that.
Okay. So they were the brothers Schwartz were the inventors of the idea, and they invited some giants of Dutch design to join them. Wim Crouwel, Benno Wissing as graphic designers, Friso Kramer as industrial designer, and in 1964, now 53 years ago, total design started in a beautiful canal house at the Herengracht in Amsterdam. Also Ben Bos was, you see him here left, was there from the beginning, first as staff manager, and he proved to be a leading and stable factor of the rapid growing design firm. Later, an almost endless parade of designers came and left. You see, it's an amazing, you cannot read it, but it's the amount what counts. And I named some names: Hartmut Kowalke, Juriaan Schrover, Wim van der Weert, Daphne Duivelshof, Jolijn van der Wouw, André Toet from the Ajax logo, but that he did it later, after he left Total Design. Jelle van der Toorn, Bram Engelse, Esther Verdonk, Reinier Homan, Reinoud, Frans Lieshout, Anton Beke, Theo Peters, Rijk Boerma, and many, many others. Among them were also Arlette Brouwers, Wim Verboven, and Joost Klinkenberg, and myself, all present tonight as member of the panel. Also member of our panel is Sonja Greven, as a representative of the often invisible back office of Total Design to keep a business healthy and running. You shouldn't ask that kind of things of designers. What we like to explore tonight are the following topics in a random order. Yeah. Was Total Design a unique and non-reproducible enterprise, or is there still a need for a design firm headed by a group of well-known giants, supported by a throng of mostly anonymous dwarfs? That's a saying of Elschot about Simon Carmichael. Second, how was Total Design able to maintain a high average of design quality, and, as far as I know, without a written manifesto that promoted the basic design principles? You see here a grid, that was typical Total Design. They were famous. They have drawers with grids for 8 points to 9 points letters, 9 to 10, etc. That was typical Total Design. They were prepared, and they just have to fill in the grid. It depends who you, some people can discuss in that grid thing. Okay, what was the role of the rapidly upcoming new technology, like photo setting, computer-aided design, with programs like InDesign and Illustrator? Total Design was the first firm who bought the aesthetics, you see it here, the three of them in one room, and each as big as a small kitchen board. Total Design was divided in teams. For instance, Wim Verboven and Joost Klinkenberg were in the team of Ben Bos. Arlette Brouwers worked in the team of Wim Crouwel, and I had my own team successively with Esther Verdonk, Theo Peters, and Rijk Boerma. How did they manage to coordinate the design results, or didn't they manage it at all? A solid back office is the economical backbone of an enterprise, any enterprise? Or was this different for a design firm like Total Design? I remember the introduction of timesheets, and how did that work after that the rumors and the protests were all gone? Well, these are more enough topics for half an hour, and we have only half an hour, so I said, let's just start, and I want to do it by turn, each by turn. So first I have a special question to each of you, and at the end we can discuss, including the audience, about some general topic. First, I'd like to start with Ben's former staff members, Wim Verboven and Joost Klinkenberg, both here present. There was also, it was not a complete team, but they were happy to talk tonight. I'll start with Wim. Wim, how acted the group under the supervision of Ben Bos compared to the other teams?
Well, I think the way of working of a team was very depending on the character and the personality of the team leader, the senior designer, Wim Crouwel or Ben Bos. And as it were, total different personalities and different way of working, they looked for team members according to their possibilities and their own characters and to join them. So I think Ben Bos was very expressive, not only as a person but also in his way of designing, more than Wim Crouwel. And in that time, and also later, there were no written rules of design principles in total design. Dus what you just mentioned was the grids. The grids were strictly used for one client. So all the clients had a corporate identity. The corporate identity should last longer than nowadays. And you have to work according to the grids and the manuals, the design manual. And in the design manual of a client, every typographic specifications, color specifications, image specifications were noticed, and you have to work along to these rules. That was a kind of continuity in the design quality, I think. And the difference between the teams, I think Arlette can talk about the team of Wim Crouwel. I think in the team of Ben Bos, like Joost said, you went into the deep. You came in the team and you get a lot of freedom, but also a lot of responsibility. And it was, at the end, if you managed to stay there and survive there, you were quite all around. You have to present your designs to a client. And for a lot of people, this was the first time you came from the academy or graphic school and said, well, I made a nice design, but what's next? You have to present it to a client and you have to discuss it and you have to analyze the question of the client. And what I learned in that time is that you didn't work directly for the client, but for the customer of the client you worked for. For instance, if you worked for a medical organization, they were high classified, scientifically educated, but their customers, maybe they were just people that just want to see or to know how to use their products. So actually, the message you have to bring to the customers should be very simple and not in a scientific way. So that's what I learned in that team, apart from aesthetic quality.
Was it different from other teams then?
I think, but that Arlette can confirm that, I hope. They were working more for cultural clients and organizations. Mm-hmm. And the team of Ben Bos were working for more commercial clients.
But there was no Bible?
The Bible was the design manual of the client,
yeah,
of the corporate identity,
so
but not of total design. There was not a written Bible of total design.
But what you see here is not especially total, but this was a later stage.
This was later, yeah.
This was very late.
Yeah, it's at random.
No,
this is
there's
not
nothing.
at random.
Oh no,
there's
this is
nothing
this is the
random.
status thing. Yeah, now you get the other
Dit
ones.
is,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. Okay.
There's a whole there's a whole series.
Now we're
That's
talking.
my time.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we didn't want to have discussion about everything, but we
but
make yeah.
it's not.
Okay. No, it's not
yeah.
representative.
Yeah, not representative of
Yeah.
what he's telling here. Yeah.
It's more amazing that there is so much difference. As far when you see the collection of Wim Crouwel Institute, where all these slides come from, it's amazing how many styles and.
Yeah, but the examples were status examples.
Yeah, I
Because
know.
my work in the later years.
Yeah, that's a
So-
question for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Completely
but this
different,
was,
yeah.
And it's all made by hand.
Yeah.
So it's all graphic design by hand,
Yeah.
old-fashioned
Yeah.
graphic design.
But these are the 60s and the 70s.
Yeah.
The early 80s. And
Early
Early
80s,
80s. Early 80s.
Yeah.
Yes. But what about the team? The word communication. The goal of our projects was never a discussion. We didn't talk about communication.
No.
So we make brochures and folders and leaflets and house styles, but the word communications or values or things like that, we just only talk about making good design. Good, strong design,
Yeah, basic design, yeah.
basic
Functional.
design, and
Form follows function.
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah, and not design follows communication.
So then could you say that these are actual rules of TD then? Form follows
Function.
the function?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a way of
Yeah,
thinking.
that was the way of thinking, yeah.
But it was in that
Yeah.
time, in that
And it
period.
was Swiss typography.
Yeah.
Swiss typography.
Was that
Yeah.
typical for TD or was it typical for that time in general?
I think the last.
It was typical for the time in general in
Absolutely.
the 60s, 70s,
Yeah.
80s.
Talking about communication and goals and marketing, that is
That's
later.
That's later.
That didn't exist now.
No.
But there were not so many studios.
No.
So
Sometimes an advertising agency visit the Kennel building, for example, the Randstad advertising agency. Oh my God. Guys
And you
with,
worked for
fast,
Randstad a lot.
Fast
Yeah.
cars and ties and things like that, and talking not normally. And so there was no discussion, just argues, and so they leave the building. And
But how can you work for this firm the same time as all these marketing people?
Well, a director like Ben Bos, he knows very, very well what was good design. And there was an enormous match with Frits Goldsmeding, for example. He was the
CAO.
He's the CAO, the director
So-
of Randstad. So he knows exactly what he wants. He was a very good opdrachtgever, a very good...
You think that is nowadays maybe missing? That you have no
Absolutely.
longer a direct relation with the CAO, but just with marketing. whatever.
CAOs
Yeah.
are not any in the
Public
meeting
relations
with
and things
But I
like
think in
Yeah.
that time it was typical Dutch.
yeah.
That there was a division. Graphic design and advertising was divided.
Yeah.
Not in England
Yeah, that's true.
and not in
Yeah.
America. But here in Holland it was
this is
or
very
you were a
old.
graphic designer or you were in advertising.
Yeah.
And that there was always a clash. So
Nice.
was not so nice.
It was nice.
It was not so nice.
It was nice in a way that Total Design could do it.
It's
Yeah.
romantic.
It's amazing.
now.
No,
Yeah.
romantic.
And it's,
Advertising was a little bit
Dirty work.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
dirty.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it still is for some
Yeah.
people.
they
Yeah.
nothing know about design.
Marketing.
And designers, guys with beards and long hair and you can't talk with them. So a designer.
But one more. But what was the difference between your team, which is Ben Bos' team, but just a drum, and for example Wim Crouwel's team or on any other team? How did they work together to maintain the quality? Did you discuss the work together?
Wim and I and Frans Lieshout, we discuss about
Yeah.
sometimes.
That's
Yeah,
it.
well, yeah,
Interned
on the
within the
job
team.
like
while
that.
working,
But
yeah.
Ben was not involved in discussions, absolutely not. If he came back from a client, he knows exactly what he wants. And
That's you.
yeah,
Right there.
he knows exactly what he wants, and
You got a short briefing and you start designing
keep
and
his
then
coat
discussing.
and take a pencil,
But
buy a
what-
pencil, for
Yeah, I
example.
don't want
and,
to elaborate too much. But what happened with one team didn't good service? How was it? Did one notice it, or because how keep the quality of all the teams together?
I think the personal quality,
So it was the
responsibility
so
of,
it was the
of the
team,
members of the team.
the designers in the group,
Absolutely.
what maintained the quality. It was
Yeah.
not, and then it happened by
There was
itself.
not a total design standard or
No.
something
Yeah,
like
but
that.
but some things you can't do, huh?
Like what?
Like centralize or.
Yeah.
For me,
Or
it was
capitals.
or it was for me it was very hard to use the color green or
It was forbidden.
orange. Yeah, more or less.
Why?
Yeah, more or
Why?
less.
It's not
Yeah,
done.
that were not the basic colors. Wim loves the grey and cyan. Yeah,
So
And that was it.
basically, if I understand it right, then there wasn't a TD Bible or guideline, but the designers themselves kind of drew what should be and shouldn't be part of a TD design.
yeah, but it was not only. It was also the style. Really the style like Mondriaan, Van Doesburg.
Functional style,
But,
yeah.
yeah, and form follows function. And no serifs, no serif lettering for us in the team of Wim Crouwel.
So there was a common sense.
Oh,
A common sense.
yeah.
And not
Yeah.
there was not a weekly critic review that you all have to hang
Yeah,
up.
we had that on Friday
Really?
night, but
Friday nights,
yeah,
Didn't work.
but it didn't work because there was
because
so
there was a lot
much
of wine
trouble.
on table.
We tried it over and over.
Can you give us a little bit of insight on how this typical Friday night meeting was like? Like what happened?
Wim?
Yeah, Wim?
Yeah.
I thought it has more to do with drinks.
No, yeah, that was your time.
pardon.
But it was before you came.
But I think this tryout was later when Anton Beek and different styles were involved in total design. We started like this, just clear images, the typography, and then there was a need to an input of different ideas. Anton Beek, Jurian Schrover, discussions with other bureaus,
Dunbar, for instance, yeah.
And it was very interesting, but it didn't change the ideas inside in the organization. And
It's remarkable. There's a kind of close that without spoken, there was one line, one way.
But I think if you want to go to total design, before you did your application, you knew what the style was, you knew what the way of working was, and you wanted to join this. So there was never a strange...
Yeah.
Well, that's not really true, because the first year I worked with Jurian Schrover.
You made a mistake.
And
That was totally different.
why?
Yeah, totally another style. It's just
Yeah, but
different
that's
work.
what I meant.
Yeah.
The senior designers got their personality and the character. And Jurian Schrover was a senior designer, and he liked the way of designing, the process, more than the result. And the process was all handwork.
Yeah, a lot of handwork, yeah.
And there was a lot of work.
Yeah.
And there was no computers, no programs
No,
to
I was
make
sitting
it
in the
easier.
middle and he was looking what I was doing.
So it was an island inside total design.
Yeah. Yeah, but it was the same with Anton Beek.
Yeah.
When I came there, Anton Beek was there, Jurian Schrover and Wim Crouwel.
And they were all kind of looking over your shoulder on how the process was going, or
Yeah, and
was there
sometimes
difference?
Wim Crouwel came over the wall. The little-
cubicles, the work cubicles.
Yeah.
back
And
in
then
the
he thought,
day, that was
"Wow,
very
I
hip.
can't believe this, what you're doing here. It's terrible.
Ik had
Yeah.
dus web.
But we did it.
So if we dig a little further, we'll get a lot of stories behind the scene, but I don't
know if that's so
but
important.
it's still amazing that it is
Yeah.
one style, one approach, not a style, and recognizable. And
Form follows function, I think.
So, we have to go on, and we'll come back. And I want to ask Joost, because that's the order of my list. Then there came the new technology, the S-status. That was a totally revolution. It was an. Can you tell a little basic? What is the S-status?
A status. It's not a computer design equipment. It was a computer-aided design. So it was an aided machine, a perfect technical drawing machine. That was it. You must imagine at that time, there was on the top of the building, of the canal building, there was an artwork studio, a final artwork studio. And a couple of guys and girls produced the whole day paper boards as a sort of a combination of paper prints, logo types, strips with text columns, illustration prints by paper. And of course the famous letra set transfer headings just in Helvetica and Universe. It was a large cupboard.
On a different floor, eh?
Yeah.
Then we worked.
On the top floor. On the top floor.
And
on the top
climb
floor.
up a lot of stairs.
And they stick it together with spray mount and with photo glue and with cello tape and corrections when you like to make. That was terrible because everything must remove with removal liquid and then paste it again and again. And so that was terrible. It was very labor-intensive work. It was very time-expensive work. It was very expensive. And making changes was really not possible. So as a designer, you make your sketch, bring it up to the final artwork studio, and that's it. And then the S-status. The first time I met that machine, it was a visit on the company, they show me some curved lines. They started on the left side with a thickness of 0.1. And it was a curved line. In the middle it was 0.2 and on the end it was 0.1 again. Try it to do it by hand. Absolutely impossible. So it was a short demo, but it was amazing. And so I think the great benefit of that status was it was a very stable, high quality. Because we must make a step in that time to the next century, but to the next process of making artwork. And I think the benefit was it was a very fast machine, high speed. It was very stable in quality, high quality, and you can make changes. You can make.
Go back to the slides. What made on the status with the color dots and so on.
The color dots.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first slide.
This is all S-status.
This is all S-status work.
Yeah.
And for example, this logo type. There's a design of mine, and I make a basic design. I try to sketch it with pencil on paper. That's the first step, and I always do, and I do it all on this time as well. So the first step is making some sketches, and then I make copy and paste it on a screen, 12 times or 16 times, and then I make very little changes in the design. So I can choose not the best, but I can choose the best there is. So, and I think that was a great benefit and a great step in process. So that was it was an amazing time.
But what's in the middle? What is that for?
That is the CEP, the coordinated production, electricity production companies in the Netherlands.
Okay.
So I can also imagine that in that time the first computers were being used. That maybe it's comparable with how it went at home, that a lot of people were hesitative to use technology in their work. How was that with you guys? I mean, was everybody just embracing it as it came, or was there also hesitation?
Good question. Arlette.
Yeah, but not total design.
No?
Because I left before the Stadis was there. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's another story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a lot of emotion.
Yeah.
Sorry, there
There
were?
was a lot of emotion.
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 Yeah.
Machines.
Oh.
Yeah.
Machines in the company. And this machine, it was also a very, very expensive machine. Because in America there was a small computer company with a crazy guy, and it was named Apple. And in the same time, in 1984, there was an introduction of the Apple Macintosh. And the price, it cost $7,000. The first Macintosh with 2 programs. A typewriter program, Mac Write, and a paint program, Mac Paint. It was a pixel manipulating program. It was not for producing very nice curves. So,
And so how much would
and
this
how
one
much
cost?
was this? This was $160,000. No, it was 160,000 euros, 350,000 guilders, and 180,000 dollars. So and there were 3 of these machines. So it was very expensive, and the company almost broke for that reason. It did.
It did.
It did.
It did. Because there was no any experience with that machine. And that was the reason why there was so much emotion.
Okay.
Because of the money. It was an enormous money.
I like to add this fantastic adventure. And okay. My next question is for Arlette,
Yeah.
who started as an assistant to Wim Crouwel. I think you're only with 2, eh? You were the only in the team of Wim.
I always.
So it's not so big as Van Ben Bos.
No.
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 Now, can you describe your work relationship, if you, as far as you can compare it with Ben and his team?
Yeah, it was at that time in the middle.
Yeah.
In the middle.
Yeah.
And he was already an éminence grise. So, what could I say? I don't know if there... Yeah, André Toet was in the beginning there, I think. And he left, and then Henk Hobé came there as well.
But because...
And what?
Wim said within Ben's team you were totally independent. Only at the end you have to to defend yourself, or you had a lot of freedom. Was it the same as Wim? You had a lot of freedom, or there were more restrictions in limitations in type font or whatever?
There were a lot of limitations on design. Yeah, I worked a lot for the Stedelijk Museum.
Yeah, as we see.
And that was the grid. So I was but Wim was never in. He was never in.
So where was he then?
He was at the TU Delft,
Right.
part-time. And he had a lot of meetings.
He gave a lot of lectures.
A lot of lectures,
privately.
yeah.
He earned money with that,
Yeah.
privately.
Yeah.
It was
So,
Were you? Is it like a master and a pupil, or it's like Rembrandt and his, or how was it?
Well, not in design, but because I thought the design was very easy. So in design, I didn't learn too much from Wim, but I learned a lot of organization and work with clients and do presentations and things like that. And he had a very huge network. So I learned a lot of people, and I know a lot of people, and I learned to work with artists and curators and things like that, and with printers.
Yeah.
So I did everything, most of the things outside the studio.
But you were on your own.
Yeah, I was more or less
And what
on my
happened?
own, yeah.
And what happened if he wasn't happy with your results? He called you
He
at
called
night?
me. He called me at night. Yeah.
Okay.
And he said, "Well, yes." Or I was at the printers, and we had a poster for the architect Dudok, and well, we had some discussions about the color. The color had to be green. I thought, oh boy, which color green? So I was at the printer, and it was Steendrukkerij de Jong in Hilversum. And he was at the TU Delft, so we called each other, and he said, well, I have a very nice tree here in my garden, and that color. So I said, can't you say which Pantone color? Eh? We have this things for printers, but he didn't have this.
And he could have sent a photo on his smartphone because there were no
smartphones. So, well, I had to guess the leaves of the kastanjeboom.
You didn't go to the real tree.
Yeah, it was in Delft, and I was in Hilversum.
Who cares?
And the press was running. Yeah, the press was running. So, so I thought, well, this is the color then, well, more or less. No, I was totally wrong. And his son came in, Wim Crouwel, very famous architect now. And he came in and said, oh, what a wonderful poster, such a good color, green. It was very hard green. And he had his studio, and he had this color for his studio because he knows that his father thought it was a terrible color. And, then it was totally wrong. So he went to the printer and did it another color green. So
that was the time that you could go to the printer.
Yeah.
I heard from designers, he made a design, all or InDesign, of course, and there's a kind of printers, brokers firms, they send it out for the best price, and you have no idea who's printing it. That's the nowadays.
Yeah.
Okay, I have to go to Sonja. You've seen her on the photo. Can you a little say about what is the specific on a big design firm? So what does a big design firm need from as a back office? Different than other ones. So what was your idea about it?
I don't think it was so quite different from other.
But there were hardly no any design office as big as that. You had Dunbar, and you had. There were not many big design offices, so you had to find out by yourself, I guess.
Yeah, so we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you and there was never. I remember always the monthly critical moment that the people from the calculation department, how they call it, they had to set the invoices, and they come to sit on your table, and then you have to say how much money we could make, how much hours we could describe, and it were tough hours always, because you know, can we send it on? No, it's not ready. We have to wait, and so. And there was an offerte, of course, and there were more hours spent, always the same, it repeating all the time. And I don't think it changed in design offices now. There's always too much hours spent, and the offerte is too low. But how did you deal with that? Or wasn't that your job?
It was not my job.
Oh.
It was the financial department.
Yeah, okay.
But I think nowadays it's still the same. In '86, when I came back, my second period at Total Design, a lot was changed then in regarding to the first period. The first period was absolutely not profit-driven, the Crouwel period, and the second period was absolutely totally different.
And more efficient.
And more efficient.
So that is the change.
And timesheets.
How
the
was
timesheets were introduced then.
And for you personally, working there, you were also there during that transition. So from non-commercial, or at least less commercial, to this more commercial shift.
Yeah.
How was that for you? Because you obviously worked with these people a long time, and then you also saw this change in culture, change in ways of
You were the only one who worked for Total Identity after.
Absolutely.
So you're the only one who can compare them. In general, of course, you don't have to get. We like customs, but the idea is more that we can learn something. What's a new Total Identity compared to Total Design in terms of effect?
Yeah, the first period, like Joost told about estates, there were also changes in the back office.
Yeah.
We also pioneered in the back office for. We at first we had the IBM Ball typewriters, my first period, and the telex machine. And when I came back, we had computers, the digital.
But I think
Word
that
processing.
the first period, it was maybe the wrong name, but it was a guru-driven.
Yeah, absolutely, and non-profit
And it
driven.
is the transition from the first years. It was a combination of a collection of some individual designers. Argue the whole day and making noise and troubles and so on. And later and nowadays you can't run an office by gurus or so. What
Is that
absolutely,
over?
absolutely not.
Is that over?
Why not?
No, look at a guy
Maybe we can have some
I
response.
think this
Look at a
actually,
guy like Rosengaarde. It's an individual designer with a lot of more or less assistants. Not he is the guru. That is it's or a guru-driven or a team, and you work like a team, like Total Design on this moment, I think.
So we actually also have a question for you guys, which we are thinking about as well. Like, you took us back in the days where TD was leading as designers agency. You were the rulers of the realm of design, basically, in that time. Things have changed, obviously. A lot more players came on the field. By now, it's much diverse, it's much bigger, but there's a lot of small agencies as well, players. So our question is basically, is there still a need or an urgency for big players like TD was back in the day? And if yes, why? And if no, also why not? So I'm not sure if you guys have any thought on this. If you do, please raise your hand and I will come and talk with you. And if not, you can still think about that whilst I look at you.
Yeah, but big
what you think about that?
Big is not a goal as well. It's not the main effort. Because I think profit is now, you have to make profit in an office on this moment. And I think you have to find out what is my goal, what is my value in this moment for clients, and not how big must I moet ik worden. That's not
Grow.
Yeah. Growing is not a goal, but making value and making
quality,
profit and continuity. Making steps in the future.
I just learned, I thought nowadays there are a lot of design agency, especially in Amsterdam, were bigger than Total Design, but that is not true. I just heard it from Rob.
Like?
There's only Fabriek, there's more than 100 I think, and VBAT, they have 50 maybe. So I thought there was more big companies, but that's not true. So it's still unique that the big design office, and especially design driven, not there's no marketing, no website, whatever. There's no volume. It's mostly creativity. Total Design was not a production station. They did produce, so of course, it was printed, but it was not making websites, and so there was no much supporting. So it's still amazing that it still is a big firm, and it's hardly overwhelmed. How do you say it? Overtaken by agencies now. They're still big in that time for now.
Also, if you have any other questions for our panel, then now is the time. Please raise your hand. If not, then I would like to thank you so much for taking us back to the TDA agency and really giving us an insight on the time and how people work together there. I can feel I can even smell like the old computer smell and the way these old buildings probably must have sounded, the squeaking floors and the walking down and up the stairs all the time.
Sticky
I
stairs.
remember.
Sticky stairs.
We had a pre-meeting for this for all of us, and it was an hour of humorous gossips, but you asked us to skip that.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry for that. It is rather serious, but we had a lot of. It gives a kind of atmosphere, that's for sure. Even when the teams were separated, sometimes the teams didn't hardly communicate, not by reason, but just by nature. But still, if we went, we had excursions sometimes, and they were always furry. And there was and we had lunch together. That was also a big issue, and that helps a lot. And so it was a kind of community in all its diversity, and we know each other. Still, we communicate a little by, I think, Arlette, or make an own Instagram, no, whatever.
YouTube.
Instagram?
No, Sonja did. So there's communication,
Facebook.
and so there are some
Facebook,
roots,
WhatsApp.
and that gives still a good feeling.
Great.
And we worked with Premsla and Vonk, was downstairs. So that's also important. Yeah.
And of course there were like Friso Kramer. It was in 3D. We left that out, of course, and because it was not part of the graphic design thing.
Yeah.
There's someone who made a short movie about Wim Crouwel, Lex Reitsma, and we want to share this, at least part of the documentary he's working on now, called Then and Now. And Lex Reitsma, the maker of the documentary, is currently still working on a longer version, which will broadcast somewhere the end of this year or beginning next year on Avro Tros. So let's sit back and watch that.
Eigenlijk zou ik willen zeggen dat de grafische vormgeving die wij hier plegen te doen is erg ordenend optreden. Ik geloof dat de grafische vormgeving en de typografie zoals wij die doen, daarover denken wij in de eerste plaats dat het maken van een bepaalde ordening is. En dat ontwerpen, dat komt bij ons eigenlijk pas in een veel later stadium. Dat komt pas helemaal aan het einde.
Ik ben een rechtlegger, laat ik het zo maar noemen. Ik heb de neiging om alle dingen die op tafel liggen recht te leggen.
Ik heb hier deze dingen voor mij liggen en dat zijn een soort van ruitjesvellen of lijntjesvellen, stramines, een soort van voetbalveld waarop wij ons spel spelen.
Iedere keer weer als ik iets scheef zie staan, zet ik het recht. En dat is een akelige gewoonte, maar daar ben ik nu een keer mee getrouwd. En ik denk dat dat met name de hele oorzaak is waarom ik zo hecht aan die vaste stramines, de vaste methode van typograferen.
En wij zoeken voor een bepaalde opdracht meestal eerst zo'n speelveld, het lijnenspel waarbinnen zich de zaak, het ordenende lijnenspel waarbinnen de zaak zich moet afspelen. En daarop wordt ontworpen.
Als je dan de eerste idee hebt hoe je dat over het voetlicht kunt brengen, dan gaat natuurlijk de esthetiek een rol spelen. De manier waarop je dat dan gaat doen enzovoort. En dat is bij mij altijd een enorm gevecht geweest. De opdracht die je hebt moet vertaald worden op een visuele manier die overkomt. Dan kom je dingen tegen dat je denkt, om het duidelijk te maken moet ik het zo ordenen. En heeft het stramien wat ik heb ontworpen, is daar een heel goed uitgangspunt voor. Maar als ik het hier en daar afwijkt van stramien, dan ziet het er visueel beter uit.
Het probleem is namelijk bij zo'n affiche altijd, en hoe gecompliceerder de tentoonstelling, ik bedoel hoe abstracter het beeld van de tentoonstelling, hoe moeilijker het is om er een affiche voor te maken. Dat het affiche altijd een ding moet zijn wat zich in het midden bevindt tussen het publiek en de tentoonstelling die vertelt.
Het was in de periode dat die tussen 1965 en 1972... dat ik me waanzinnig bezig heb gehouden met typografie en stramien. Dat waren de hoogtepuntjaren. Het was voor mij een houvast van je welste. En ik heb af en toe daarvan afgeweken. En meestal had het met de opdracht te maken. Zoals dat 60-80 ook. Dat was een periode dat er heel veel gebeurde in de kunst. En dat was de reden waarom ik het uit het lood heb gezet. Om als het ware aan te geven dat het een ander tijdperk in de wereld was. En dan zijn er van die eenvoudige middelen, iets kantelen of iets te vervormen om een bepaald effect te bereiken. Maar dat wil niet zeggen dat je dan plotseling je geloof in de stramien verloren hebt. Maar je doet er iets mee wat het effect versterken kan.
Ik zou toch op de vraag of grafische vormgeving een luxe is, heel volmondig vooruit willen antwoorden dat ik het geen luxe vind. Ik vind dat het iets is wat we broodnodig hebben. Goede grafische vormgeving.
En ik vond wel dat andere mensen moesten weten waarom ik dit deed.
Je leeft er de hele dag mee. Je staat 's morgens op en je wordt geconfronteerd met je ochtendblad. Als dat ding er slecht uitziet, dan is je hele dag bedorven.
Ik heb een enorme neiging om mezelf te verklaren voortdurend. En dat is, ik ben ermee behept en daar kan ik niks aan doen.
En als we 's avonds naar bed gaan, dan moet je geen vergissing kunnen maken tussen een aspirintje en een slaaptablet. Dan moet dat doosje glashelder weergeven, overbrengen dat je met aspirintjes of met slaaptabletten te maken hebt. En ik geloof dat op zo'n moment grafische vormgeving essentieel kan zijn.
Ik heb veel lezingen gehouden en elke keer maar weer geprobeerd om duidelijk te maken wat me motiveerde, waarom ik het deed. En het versterkte mijn eigen geloof in de dingen ook. Ik denk dat die lezingen en die inleidingen ook waren om mijn eigen werk te toetsen steeds. Om te kijken, dat beweer je nou wel, maar klopt het ook met de werkelijkheid? En daar heb ik altijd een enorme behoefte aan gehad. Altijd proberen om duidelijk te zijn. Proberen om mezelf te verklaren. En daarom heb ik ook oppositie altijd interessant gevonden. Als ik nou denk in de periode van de nieuwe lelijkheid met Renate Rubinstein. Toen ik uitgemaakt werd voor alles wat mooi en lelijk was. Toen heb ik in die oppositie heel veel kracht gevonden. Ik heb altijd gedacht, mij krijgen ze er niet onder. Ik word alleen maar sterker door die oppositie. Door mensen die proberen je onderuit te halen. En dan probeer ik iedere keer maar weer te bewijzen dat ik toch gelijk heb. Misschien is het een soort eigen wijsheid. Maar ik kon het toch niet anders. Het zit in me, zo zit ik in elkaar.
Omdat we er zo helemaal mee leven, geloof ik dat grafische vormgeving geen luxe is. Het is een onderdeel geworden van ons dagelijks leven. Elk moment van de dag hebben we ermee te maken. En ik geloof dus dat het wel degelijk ook een verrijking van je leven inhoudt. Maar voorop zou ik willen stellen, het is absoluut geen luxe. Grafische vormgeving is een noodzakelijkheid.
Ja, applaus. En tegelijkertijd zou ik een ontzettend warm, hartelijk applaus voor dit
Mag ik nog
panel.
één ding zeggen?
We gaan helaas afronden, maar wellicht na het programma
even een reactie.
op informele wijze. Hartstikke bedankt voor jullie. Sorry, I'm talking in Dutch now. I just suddenly noticed. I was talking like, no. I was saying that I wanted to thank the panel for being here and to engage us in this beautiful history and inspiring history, exciting history as well. And now I want a warm applause for them and also a warm applause for the maker of the documentary. So thank you very much. I'm completely off guard because I talked in Dutch. But I'm back again, and I want to introduce now the second part of the evening, where three foreign designers, or actually non-Dutch designers, will pitch about their work. We've asked them a couple of questions, and they are going to integrate that in their pitch. One is how it is to work in a big graphic company here, or a Dutch graphic company. They will tell us why they came to the Netherlands, why they wanted to work here, which elements of their own background can be seen in their work, and also if their work is in a way, or any way, influenced by the Dutch graphic culture. And they will try to give us a vision on what, from their perspective, Dutch graphic culture is. First, I would like to introduce our first pitcher. Her name is Nina Couvert from Van de Jong Creative Agency. Give her a warm applause.
Hello, everybody. It's very nice to be here. It's also a little bit intimidating, so I hope I'll survive. Yeah. So I'm Nina Couvert. I am French. I'm a graphic designer, firstly taught as an architect in Paris. And while studying architecture, I couldn't help but noticing that the Dutch had a special eye or a special way of designing their buildings. And that was not only visible in the architecture, but also in the publications that they will make about architecture. Of course, during my studies, I could find a lot of magazines that would deal about the topic of architecture, but most of them would be magazines that would be sort of portfolios where I was just browsing through projects. But the moment I wanted to find some more critical writings about contemporary architecture, here again I would end up with Dutch publications in my hands. Yeah, and this is actually how I discovered OAS, which calls itself a journal for architecture and is published by the Werkplaats Typografie. And I was amazed by it, so I just started to collect all issues. And what I thought was so nice about it, it was the way the typography was being used, the images were being treated. I don't know, it was just a big shock compared to these glossy magazines I had been seen so far. And because it was so nice, I started to get also all sorts of other publications, and I became a sort of publication hoarder, and I would buy everything that would just trigger me. And this had two main consequences on my life. The first one is that I decided to shift from architecture to graphic design. And the second one is that I decided to move to the Netherlands. So I applied for an exchange at the Royal Academy of Art in The Hague. But as an architecture student, I was actually not allowed to apply to a different field than the one I was coming from. So yeah, I felt like, never mind, I'm just filling it in, and I just keep my finger crossed, and I hope that the woman won't notice I'm not applying for the right field. And she did not. And she was on the phone, and she just signed it. And so she changed my life against her will. So I entered the Royal Academy of Art in 2013. I was at that time an exchange student, and then I actually stayed as a regular student. I graduated in 2015 and started my own studio right away. With my own studio, I worked mostly on projects within the cultural sector. The first one I'm going to talk to you about was a campaign called As Close to Black as Blue Can Be. It was made for a group of artists, of people from the fine arts department of the KBK that were going to graduate, and they were putting their show together. They had an introductory program where they were going to ask 2 different people per evening to pick each one of them a different movie. And the idea was like the movies had nothing to do with each other's, because this was related to the theme of the campaign, as close to black as blue can be, meaning as much different we are, will remain similar. So what I did is I watched all these movies, and then I eventually managed to find sequences that were looking quite similar, that would respond to each other's, even though the directors or the nationalities or the times of the movies would not correspond at all. After this, I worked with the group on the actual campaign, for which I used a monoprint press to make the background image. And this background image was used on all the printed materials, poster, flyers, and also all the online communication. We also made a website with this, which was displaying a very dark blue link to the title. You would hover the text and have the white popping in. You would scroll up and have scroll down, and you would have different shades of blue. I also made a catalog that was gathering all the process of the students when they were trying to build their show, get money. And it was a pretty rough publication. It was made in 4 days. It was a bit crazy. But I experimented with many papers and different types of inks, and it was actually really nice. Spoiler. Another campaign I want to talk to you about is the graduation festival of KBK of last year. I worked on it with 2 older classmates, and the concept behind this campaign was very simple. It was just, for us, graduating is not an end process, it's actually the start of a much bigger adventure. It's going to be the start of your career. And for us, actually, you're going to start expanding from this point on forever. So for this, we made a video teaser in which we gathered all sorts of materials that were related to the idea of expansion, and we spent a day in a studio experimenting and filming and trying to get something out of it. And I was actually the teaser. We also worked with photographers who took pictures of all these objects during this day, and these photos were used became the campaign images when used on posters, flyers, and all online communication. In the video, maybe you saw there was a character in an inflatable suit. We used that again during the week of the festival. We asked a few students, hey, do you want to just wear it during the day? So they wore that, and then they're working in the school for a week and being sort of the mascot of the show. We also designed signage, books, name tags, flags that were actually being awards, all sorts of different things. It was a really big project. And next to that, we also had a printed catalog that was gathering all the works of the graduates. And we also made a website. And we was also gathering the work, but also giving updates on the events during the week and the awards that people would win. Last project I want to talk to you about is this one. It was a project. It was an identity that I made for a conference called Writing, and I was organized by the Society of Artistic Research. It was the first time I was working for a Dutch client, so it was a bit big for me. They wanted a new identity, so I designed a logo for the campaign, for their conference. I also made this website that was gathering all the excerpts from the speakers and allowing people to sign in for the conference. And for the people that actually did sign in, when they would come to the conference, they would get this booklet that I designed. And it was the idea behind the publication was that it was a sort of conference toolbox. So you would open the publication and have on the left side a booklet with the content, pretty much the content of the conference. And on the right side, some sort of an archive that was piling up several loose elements, maps, a timetable, a list of participants, paper to take notes. And the idea also was that during the conference, you could gather all these extra documents that you get from speakers and eventually walk home with this conference folder. So a quick look back on my experience as a French designer trying to make her way through the Dutch design world. I would mention a few things that surprised me. The first one is that people trust me while I'm young, giving me a project that were actually quite big and without asking me where I was coming from or what did I do before this. Second one is like people did trust me while I don't really speak Dutch, and somehow like the fact that I'm French, which is still a mystery for me. And the third one is that the Dutch design culture I find quite optimistic and open. Within the different projects I worked on and still working on, I feel like there is a real sort of excitement from the client and a willing to go big or to think big. So working in my studio was a great adventure, but I felt like in order to really understand the Dutch design culture and to really sort of go deeper into my learning, my understanding, I needed to enter a bigger studio and in order to understand who are the main players of this Dutch design world. So in September 2016, I entered Van de Jong. Van de Jong works mostly for clients in the culture field, for which they create formats, and these formats can take many different forms. They can be brands, campaigns, strategies, or concepts. At the moment, we're 15 people, designers, copywriters, strategists, and project managers. To name a few projects that Van de Jong developed, and there is FOAM, the Museum of Photography in Amsterdam. Unseen, Unseen, which is a photography fair whose purpose is to put young photographers in the spotlight. And also Let It Grow, which is a platform for green enthusiasts and dedicated to help people who have innovations aiming to make the cities greener. The studio is located in Springhouse, and that's a concept that was initially developed by Van de Jong together with 2 other partners. The building is situated actually quite close from here. It's next to the central station. So it's a co-working space, and it's also there is also a nice restaurant on the ground floor. But it's also a community that gathers around 200 members who develop projects aiming at changing or rethinking society. So this opportunity I got to become part of Van de Jong has been quite rich for me, both in terms of design, but also in terms of personal development. First of all, because it made me definitely fit in the Dutch culture. At the moment, I said we're around 15 people and we're only 2 foreigners. So due to the fact that I'm heavily outnumbered, that forced me in a good way to just integrate and understand the Dutch world. And secondly, because it's making me part of the Van de Jong's approach to the Dutch design culture. And if I would try to sum it up, I would say that Van de Jong has a sort of specific vision when working with its clients. From what I experienced, clients come and they have questions they don't have the answer to. But what Van de Jong does is that it sort of comes up with an answer that sort of surpasses a bit the initial questions, or that come up with a completely unexpected answer to it. To give a few examples, you come up, you need a social media strategy. We're going to make documentaries. Or you want to reposition your institution. We're going to make its employees take over the corporate communication. So there is a sort of ambition and optimism giving you the feeling that anything is makeable somehow. And it's also very exciting to work on projects that are sort of shaping the future, the potential future of society. So what is Van de Jong teaching me about the Dutch design culture? It's making me aware that it's part of the Dutch mindset to break boundaries. Like I was saying, Van de Jong is not afraid to take risk and to push limits. But why is it so easy for Dutch people to do that, actually? My proposal to it is that in the Netherlands is a place where people can live without having to deal with strict traditions. I have sometimes been told during my years here, by Dutch people themselves, that there are not many real Dutch traditions. to illustrate this, I'll take the example of the Dutch lunch versus the French lunch. I'm sorry, I had to talk about food eventually. In France, we eat at certain times, and these times actually define if we're either going to eat salty or sugary or a lot or not a lot. And here in Netherlands, you guys can just take bread and cheese, slap it together, and it's okay. So it's fine actually, because you Dutch people don't really have to respect the strict rules. They can just do whatever they want. And I feel that it's precisely because the Dutch don't have to respect sort of strict traditions or strict etiquette that they feel much more free to turn things upside down and break boundaries. Not just with weird food, but luckily also with great design. Thank you.
Super. Thank you so much, Nina Couvert. It was an amazing story.
Thank you.
I would like you all to think about any questions you have for Nina, and please save them for after the event, because we're a little bit in a time hurry. But thank you for this, and I would like to ask for a warm applause for Nina. Great. Our next picture is from the UK, and he moved to Amsterdam in 2007, so he's been living here already 10 years. He speaks some Dutch even, and he is currently the creative director of VBAT. Please give a warm welcome applause for Graham Sturt.
Thank you, everyone. It's a real honour to be here this evening amongst you guys particularly. Some real design heroes here. Thank you. A few months ago I received the invitation to come and talk here, and there were some specific questions. I wanted to stick to those questions and answer them directly, but kind of do it in a back-to-front way, the way that I kind of answer them. So if I go to my first question. So who are you and what do you make? So if I can answer that, I'll start with kind of the present day, and then I'll go backwards to kind of introduce how I got there. So I'm creative director of VBAT, or VBAT, as some of you may know it. I became creative director there 3 years ago, this month, actually. And I'm originally from the UK, as you know. We're based in this lovely old bicycle factory on the south of Amsterdam. It used to be the Simplex bike factory, and now it's this wonderfully kind of illuminated space. It's an old factory, so it has this kind of real lovely light that comes into the building at all times of the day, and sometimes that can be hell if there's sun on your screen, but most of the time it's amazing. And we have these letters in the entrance there which spell out the word refreshing, and that's a mantra actually. It's what we kind of live and die by with our work. We like everything that we do to be actually refreshing and kind of rethink what we're doing each time. And that's something that we're reminded of every day when we come in the building. One thing I wanted to mention as well is some facts. So we're 85 people now, and we were 50 people last year. But last summer we merged with another Dutch agency, DBOD, and we came up to 85 people, which it is a big number, and it's been something that's kind of changed the dynamic of the company as well. So it's a more vibrant, kind of busy place now than it was before. And it has more Dutch people as well within the agency. So we have 35 new Dutch colleagues as well, which is great, alongside the 14 nationalities that we have within the agency from VBAT before. So that makes us kind of unique, I think, in a way. We have this lovely office in Amsterdam, and we also have a base in Mexico City as well, which we work from with 2 designers, and we work on projects down there, and we look to kind of spread our reach through South America as well. We're 35 years old, give or take a few years. and we work in something like 20 markets. So we're very international in our approach, but we also work with some great Dutch clients too. And if I can run through some of our current clients. So last summer, we worked for the City of Amsterdam and the Stichting Amsterdam Gay Prides to put on Euro Pride, the big event that was in last summer. And maybe some of you saw the big concert in front of the palace. That's something that we do pro bono for the city, and we like to kind of give back as well with our projects. We also work in the cultural sector for the Concert Gebouw on Museum Plane as well. We create the visual identity for them. And we also have some unusual projects that come in from time to time. This example here, Prophecy, is a limited edition whiskey for the King of Bhutan, which we created 2 years ago. So it's a kind of a special project that came through our chairman, Eugene. And yeah, we have a really nice, rich mix of clients. We also work with NS, Railways. We look after, in the past, we've looked after their annual reports, and we also look after some of their retail as well. So we revamped Kiosk, their on-platform coffee and bakery offer, about 2 years ago. And probably our biggest client is Heineken, and we constantly work with Heineken, the brand itself, and also their kind of portfolio of brands internationally. And finally, PostNL, we created the identity for that about 4 or 5 years ago as well. So let's take a little step backwards. This image here I put here for Paul's benefit. Paul is inspired by the London Underground, but it shows actually where I come from. And I grew up to the southwest of London, here, which is a place called Virginia Water. It's about 35 miles outside of London. But my grandparents were in Paddington, in the centre of London. So I virtually spent all of my time backwards and forwards at weekends in London. And it was at that point I started to think, I have to be in London. And that was my dream. So I was from there, but really wanting to be here. And that seed was set very early. And I think that that's kind of typical of most kind of young designers in England, that they want to be in London. Which is a shame, really, because if you look at the UK, there's some great cities and some great places to design as well. So if you think about Sheffield, Birmingham, Leeds, for instance, they all have great design scenes, but if you live in London, you're kind of London-centric. And in fact, this is kind of how most designers actually see the UK. They see it as a kind of London in the centre, and these kind of other places to the side of it, and don't even start to talk about where Wales is or Scotland. It doesn't even come into the picture. And particularly if you work in a London agency, you can actually think that London is the centre of the universe. And I think for a lot of time, that's the way that I thought, which was a bit sad, but that was my reality at that point. But I went to university in Hull, which is in the north east of England, and it's only a stone's throw across the water to Amsterdam. And it was at this point that I kind of started to actually pick up on Dutch design. I didn't have a clue about what Hull was like when I went there. I went there because my dad died and I wanted to get away from London. So when I went to Hull, all I knew was that the House Martins and the Fine Young Cannibals were from Hull, and it had a bridge that went nowhere. But that was it. But luckily, some great things started to happen soon after that, particularly related to my course. Luckily, since then, Hull has changed a lot, and it's European City of Culture now. But in 1990, it looked nothing like this. It was kind of a very, very different place. But then I arrived in Hull, and through the first few years of my course, there were some really interesting things happening related to Dutch design, actually. So I think at that time, Gert Dunbar was teaching at the Royal College of Art, and he had some really influential, or later influential students. So he taught this group of designers called Why Not Associates, and they actually, one of their first ever jobs was to brand the City of Hull Festival. And I remember seeing this work and thinking, this is amazing. This is something that I'm really, really interested in. It really triggers me, and I'm inspired. And these are still things I pulled out of the drawers. I'm an avid collector, and I keep these things. And they're still inspirational to me, but they're very, very classic, I think, in the way that they picked up on Dutch design of that era. They were very inspired by Dunbar. So I was triggered at that point. And then in 1992, I came to Amsterdam for the first time with my course, and I visited Atheneum, the bookshop, and I found this lovely book on stamps designed by this guy, Jan Kees Shellfish, which I think is haddock, isn't it, in English? And he had worked for the PTT on this stamp book, and it just stopped me in my tracks because I couldn't imagine in England seeing a book on stamps that would be so beautiful. It was split into two halves, one half about stamps, one half about the sketches about the stamps. And it was really, really inspiring. And I thought at this point, Dutch design is something that I have to really get interested in. And then my Eureka moment happened in my last year when a tutor of mine introduced me to this piece of work, which was the Dutch Police by Studio Dunbar. And I remember it coming up on screen, particularly this image in the middle of the Porsche, and thinking to myself, how can a police car be so sexy? It's amazing. Because if you think about, well, you don't know, but the English police cars at that time were not sexy. And this just looked so kind of progressive to me. And also the work of Hardwerken and Una and Irma Bohm. I was starting to get introduced to that by my tutor. And I really, really felt that there was a seed being planted here that I had to kind of follow one day. But it was mentally parked at that point. But it was very, very inspiring again. But then I graduated, and the call of London was strong at that point. But it was strong because there was a reason to go back to London. The design scene there was really fertile, and there were really amazing agencies around at that time, particularly small independents like Tomato, Me Company, Fuel, illustrators like Ian Wright, and kind of smaller individuals like Swifty, who were creating Straight No Chaser magazine. And these were people that I wanted to mix with. So London drew me back, and I went to work at ID magazine. And I worked there for 3 months as a placement with my friend Scott King, and I had the time of my life. It was amazing, working in a kind of fashion-based magazine. It was pretty much all cut and paste. It was kind of not very computerized, so I had to learn hand skills, and that was very interesting. And I also had some great opportunities to go to parties as well in London with these kind of people from ID who were all crazy. And it was a great grounding in an introduction into design, but being in London at that certain point of time as well. So I'll speed on. Then over the next few years, I progressed to a design agency called 4i, where I had the great opportunity to work with some amazing clients for a young designer, like the Rolling Stones on the Voodoo Lounge World Tour, Yo Sushi, an amazing conveyor belt sushi bar. And then I progressed to another agency called Fitch, where I worked with Lucky Strike for a few years on things like the BAR Formula One team. And then there were some things which led me back to thinking about Amsterdam. So I did a brand store for Lucky Strike on Leidsestraat. And then in about 2004, I was working freelance for an agency called Chemistry, and we worked on the identity for the Netherlands 1, 2, and 3 TV channels remotely from London. And at this point, I started to think, I need a new challenge. I want to go to Amsterdam. So I did. I got the offer of a job at VBAT, and it gave me a new challenge. And for the next 7 years, I worked there. Fast forward to 2014, the chairman, Eugene Bay, offered me the opportunity to become the creative director, and he gave me this compass as a way to kind of guide myself in the future creatively and keep the company in the right direction. So this intrigue and love of graphic design coming out of the Netherlands has kind of manifested itself in a way that I started to kind of interview Dutch design heroes 1.5 years ago to follow this passion of what inspired me to come here. I've done 9 of those now. I started off with Wim Crouwel, and then went on to Gert Dunbar. And everybody was incredibly kind and helpful in getting me here with this as well. People gave me contacts and opened doors for me. And the interviews themselves have been the most amazing things. They've been great grounding for me to actually understand Dutch graphic design, understand the history, and really get to know it well. I interviewed Paul a few months ago as well, Jan van Toren, Gerard Hadders, again, the influence of Hardwerken. Also Jacques Kouaida, Irma Bohm, and Hans Bochting from UNA. And I'm just slowly working through these, transcribing these, and I'm going to post them all online as I go along. I've posted 2 so far. So does my nationality play a role? I don't think so. Day to day, we work in an international agency. Spoken language is English, 14 nationalities. I don't think it does influence me. And what's my vision on the culture in a Dutch design agency? I think that's the vision I would have in any design agency, and that's to kind of create a basis of initiatives to actually inspire people. And they're based on inspiration, collaboration, talent, and sharing. And the first one about inspiration is we have an initiative called the C-Word Talks, where we invite in guest speakers each month to come and talk about their brand of creativity. And we've had some amazing speakers. This is a Conchita Wurst, who won the Eurovision Song Contest, came in last summer to talk about creativity and the LGBT movement. I won't show you this film. Today we also believe heavily in talent, and we have interns from all over the world come and intern with us. We have two Dutch at the moment, 2 Italian and 2 English, and we're constantly on the search for young talent. It's really, really important we kind of build from the ground up. And I think the last thing is that we love to share what we do as well. So we have a great blog on medium.com called Inside VBAT, and we're constantly sharing what we do. So we write stories about anything to do with creativity. And we've got over 200 stories there now, nearly 4,800 followers, and that equates to about 30 days of reading, if you've got some time to kill. So essentially, I think we're one big creative melting pot. There's this mix of nationalities, which I really, really love. It makes the agency really rich in terms of the quality of the work, the type of work that we can produce, and the kind of day-to-day mix as well. It just makes for a really interesting working space. Thank you very much.
Just a quick question, Graham. You were telling us about the interviews that you were making. Where can we find them?
So they're on the Medium, on my Medium space, medium.com/Graham Sturt, I think, or something. But you can search for them and you can see the interview of Wim Crouwel and Gert Dunbar, and soon Ben Bos as well.
And the rest, that will follow after that.
Yeah, and they'll follow, but they take time for me to put together. But they're really worth it.
Wonderful.
And I love doing them.
Thank you so much, Graham Sturt. Give him a warm applause. Our last picture for tonight is a Turkish designer who works at Die Twee, and his name is Oygar Erdal. Give him a warm applause.
Mic check. Yeah. Hi. Goedenavond. My name is Oygar. I'm a designer, a creative musician. My background is industrial product design, but for about 15 years now, I've had the chance to do many different disciplines of design. Most of it was digital. It was flash design, coding, creative coding, then web design, and a lot of things. But graphic design was a key element that practically helped me make a living and be here on the stage. I want to start with the last job I had in Istanbul before moving here. It's called Ortanadolu. It's a denim mill producing the fabric. So if you wear denim, it's probably a few of your pairs. The fabric is from Ortanadolu. They hired me in a time when they wanted to transform from a B2B company to a B2C company, because they were in fashion, but how they were actually introducing their products, the fabrics, was extremely technical. We had been working for several years already, so and I used to do their website flyers, posters, which I love. So they hired me to actually at the level of design, so that they could communicate the products, not just A4s with a lot of data or just a picture taken from a website. They'd already taken some steps, but when I joined one-man army, I went head-on to do everything that pretty much surrounded it. What you see is the pairs. They're actually just done to show the potential of their fabric. So they did collections, several collections over a year, and special ones as well. What I had to do was everything that surrounded it. But one of my most favorite projects is the fabric library. They've, I think, around 5,000 fabrics, which were in drawers, hard to find, many codes. So the first thing we did was designing a special folder for them. Helvetica, clean, you went into the room, you actually saw what you were looking for, which was a big thing. And with their catalogs, it was really a hard job. It took months. They had to be very custom. So I simplified them, classified them, where they could actually make it modular, add fabric, and the production times and the costs were also incredibly low. The branding of the products from left to right, all the tags relating to the garments had to be designed. So I standardized them, because you do thousands of these, and most of the time it's 3 people doing it, and from conception to the production. So over a short period of time, we standardized the way the products were displayed. Even on the hangers, you'll see stickers. Those are all properly kerned and everything correct. But it also went quite vintage, of course. It's denim, so I also had to do concepts and designs for collections, that themes. This was done with a vintage showroom from London, a concept about a military, retired military personnel. The other touch point was the brochures. So again, just with my director, we had to sit down, come up with names, and then to come up with these brochures where we had to tell in the beginning rather simple things, what the colors were, the impressions we got. And of course the products, and for that as well, we so that actually the product is shot on the floor in the showroom, but tweaking and really getting to add an editorial level, so that it, from a standard brochure, we were able to make quite quickly nice brochures, and which were also consistent. And through seasons, it actually expanded, where we had more photo shoots. That's our intern, and it's a playground next to this company. Very quick shoot, and so we started making standardized but more expressive communication elements, to a point for some of them. We want full on. This was a handmade notebook. This was the prototype for it, for a technology called Alchemy 1. So it made a very old alchemy script writing booklet with a secret compartment with the goodies. But the core was the poster. So what I designed with the technical data in hand actually became the 3D space in the long run. So it was really nice to have this whole integrated thing, from brochure to stickers to the space. Everything through design became a proper touch point. And this went on through different countries every year, several seasons, where I designed the flyers, then the small to medium-sized booths, the graphic elements in them. This was for Munich. The previous, I think, was Kingpins. So my goal was there to get this standardized, and thankfully over a period of 4 years, it has. But of course, why the move? There are many factors. I come from Istanbul. It's a 15 million plus people city. There are always two faces. So this Istanbul, everybody really knows and loves, and then there's this. The increasing polarization, thanks to the leading party and Mr. Erdogan, as you know, probably from the news, which all just builds up to this ambiguous future, like what's the economy going to be like? This demand is going to be good, bad. And on a break to Amsterdam, in my first morning here, this is what I felt. Just looking through the window with a father on the rain biking and the kid holding the umbrella. Perfectly normal. This was wonderful. For me, going to the supermarket was 45 minutes. On top, it's a beautiful, diverse community, but it's still heterogeneous. It communicates well. The cities are human-centric here. You can walk. You really don't die just crossing the road. I still can't get used to the fact that cars actually stop when you're on the zebra crossing. Of course, it's design-centric, studying product design, the wheelchair, the house, they're encoded in your DNA. And then you come here, you see the whole country's actually reason of being is because there's design. From habitat to bureaucracy, which can be annoying sometimes, but then it works. And of course, it's in positive progress. This is my neighborhood, so now I go around the corner, and then there's the Centraal Museum work. This is just a regular day, so it's wonderful to have this as a part of your life. I work at D2. It's a branding and communication studio. I had the honor to design the logo after 25 years. I still can't believe it. D2 is all about really taking things out, getting to the core, making it bold, very pure, which we're going with a new update in our identity. Very, very hard client, very hard. It's like the hoodie actually didn't get built because there's actually a lot in it. And it'll be taken off the table. But I was lucky. My first client that I worked in D2 was Flisco. They're almost 170-year-old Dutch company who do amazing fabrics. And I came in the midst of the identity design. And the first thing, so denim, indigo, and Flisco also uses indigo. I extracted a brand pattern which we needed for an accent in the identity. We got it dyed in indigo, scanned it, and used it in many different elements. And I had the chance to bring in quite non-D2 things as well, like curves and scripts. This was a service and product logo design for Flisco, a custom tailoring service. And then with the identity, we provide them a toolkit where they can produce a lot of different retail elements. This was, I think, the pinnacle of I think this is where the culture is an influence, because I come from a culture where there's a lot of things going on with visual aesthetics, I mean. So for Bloom, this was actually 2 Dutch guys and me coming up volume 11 on flowers for a seasonal concept. So I took details from the fabrics, turned them into a toolkit for Flisco to also produce their magazines or social media content. And then we had this really soft and lovely flowery issue, again, which is quite far off. And this was also for Flisco, a pop. 1 minute. All right. running. This was for a store in Nigeria, where we had to bring together 3 different brands with 3 different attitudes in a refined, minimal environment. So for this, I extracted elements from the brand identities, their colors and the type. We created one handmade line work, a fine pattern framing and type system, where again we couldn't go to Nigeria, so they could actually produce the shop using modular elements, and it still brought a lot of things together without being over the top. KPN is another client I spent a lot of time on, from corporate touch points, in-store elements to the website. And here as well, this is what I'm learning, this nice thing, taking things out. This was kind of the situation with a lot of things coming out of a box, and through a graphic approach, classifying things into products, services, and bringing them back together to make it work on many mediums as possible in a proper way. And last but not the least, another reason, the reason why I came here, the positive progress, is I have the chance to work with great clients now. We're working with Triodos Bank to update, improve their existing projects, which will combine people under an impact economy. We're working for a zero footprint campus, where I'm doing a bit of programming to deliver a website. It's a project in Trade University to be in the quest of reaching zero footprint. Check it out, it's quite crazy. And last but not the least, a coffee shop, D2 branded, high-low, working on a 3GS interactive online project, which is going to be very nice, because it's all about keeping a calm state of mind and enjoying it. So thank you a lot for your time.
Thank you so much, Oygar Erdal. Thank you. And finally, we have one more guest who is not here, but who is in Kenya. Her name is Anna Miltenburg, and she's a brand developer and writer and founder of The Brandling. Some of you might know it. It's a creative agency based in Nairobi, a hub for social enterprise and innovation. And Anna lived and worked basically all over the world, and that's why we asked her also. She's Dutch, but she works and lives all over the world. We asked her finally to also reflect on the Dutch design culture, since we came from the past, from total design, which is a typical Dutch icon. Then we went to the perspective of foreign designers working in the Dutch graphic culture. And now, finally, we're moving to our final guest, who's going to read a column from Kenya, who tells how she perceives or how she holds on to the Dutch design culture in all these different countries. So let's listen to Anna Miltenburg.
What's it like to work at a Dutch design agency? Well, that rather depends on what agency you work at, or does it? I thought there is no such thing as one Dutch design agency culture until I started working abroad. As they say, while traveling, you find yourself. I've worked in Mali, Taiwan, France, England, Germany, Ireland, South Korea, Tunisia, Italy, Saudi Arabia, Kenya, Australia, US, Zambia, and Norway. I've not lived in the Netherlands for over 2 years, which has given me ample opportunity to reflect. So I'm gathering my thoughts at my desk, which is 6,670 kilometers away from Amsterdam. It's the 18th of May as I record this, and it's winter here now in Nairobi. I'm sitting in the garden surrounding my office. I'm looking at beautiful ancient trees. From the white office villa comes the loud hiss of an espresso machine. And the lawn is scattered with tables equipped with plugs and Wi-Fi, at which Kenyan professionals of all kinds type away on their laptop. This recording no doubt will have some typical Nairobi sounds in the background. Hundreds of tropical birds are trying to cover up the sounds of the relentless construction work that's all around us. So here are my thoughts on our Dutch design agency culture. If culture is a collective programming of the mind, then isn't the culture of our agencies defined by the people who populate them? And those people are surprisingly similar if you look at them within the total breadth of the entire human race. 95% of our agency population is made up of white, middle-class, left-leaning individuals. While there are some internationals and a handful of designers whose family roots lay abroad, most agencies are bastions of Dutchness. Our agencies are staffed and run mostly by people who have gone to an art academy, not an applied design school or university. Academies housed in their own buildings, solely occupied by creatives. And during our time there, our teachers encouraged us to be independent, critical thinkers, to develop our own points of view, and to believe that we are not just designers, but autonomous artists. If that is not programming, I don't know what is. All of us like to think that we are entirely unique beings who make up our own minds about what we value and what we don't. But over the years, our collective programming has become more and more evident to me. How we relate to each other as people, which qualities we value, how we deal with power dynamics, and money is surprisingly similar across Dutch design agencies. This is my entirely subjective, generalizing list of Dutch agency culture indicators. The first indicator is individuality. The Dutch value above all their individuality and independence. Designers work for their own portfolio instead of a team outcome. Dutch agencies fight for creative freedom and as much independence from client work as possible. A creative director can win the most respect from a team when she ends a client relationship because said creative freedom is not granted. Our designers are expected to have their own personal point of view, and they must express it even if they go against the person with more experience or the higher job ranking. This would be unheard of for my client in Saudi Arabia, where everything is done for the collective family. The second indicator is directness. The Dutch designer believes that directness, honesty, and straightforward discussion are the only way to run a creative process. At design schools, we believe it is okay to make students cry every now and then when we give truthful feedback. Working in South Korea, I had to learn to have respectful discussions and give someone space to save their ego, which had a huge impact on my personal development, and I really think it changed me for the better. On the other end, in London, it took me a few months to understand that my British colleagues, when they said something was interesting, meant it was not. When they said to keep investigating and that they were sure I would come up with a solution, they meant that I should drop it immediately. Through my Dutch cultural programming, I experienced the British politeness as rude, dishonest, and inefficient. And no amount of exposure to the British culture could ever change my experience of that type of behavior. The most present cultural programming is our dislike for hierarchy. To give an example, in Seoul, we had a team meeting each Monday morning. This meeting consisted of the CEO talking for about 90 minutes nonstop from memory, while designers took notes, after which everyone went to their desks. I was baffled by the lack of rebellion against such traditional leadership. In Holland, your boss was your coach, your mentor, your cheerleader. It would be bad form for her not to ask for your opinion. I had gotten spoiled into thinking that work was all about me. I come from a Dutch agency with a culture of hiring people as young as possible and giving them maximum responsibility. We believe that this was what created such new and different work. In South Korea, when I needed to hire designers for a team, our CEO recommended I pick the person with the most years of experience and the highest title, instead of basing my choice on a great portfolio. It would have been unthinkable to send a 25-year-old to our biggest client for a presentation. Another indicator, nostalgia. For all the talk about innovation in the Netherlands, working in Kenya has made me realize that we have a lot of nostalgia and a lot of hang-ups. Designing a stamp is still considered a distinction in someone's career. At graduation exhibitions, I'm struck by the amount of paper books that are still being produced. In Africa, I don't see any such nostalgia because there's nothing great to look back on. Hundreds of years of colonial oppression, slavery, and poverty. I find people are moving forward without any reserves. This means that in Kenya, you can design entirely without taboos. No one will berate you about your kerning. No design student will want to design a book or a poster. They all design for digital. No looking back. I'm sure it'll come as a surprise when I say that my work in Saudi Arabia made me see that in Holland, we still often have pretty traditional divisions of roles within genders at agencies. The back office, save the occasional IT guy, is almost always made up of women. Project managers tend to be women. The more technical design professions are often held by men. When I did a workshop at a university in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, it was the first time I had a female technician set up my laptop, screen, and audio. With men and women being completely separated from each other in all aspects of life, save for the family, women at the university completely ran their own world. They were directors and professors, held roles in security, coding, tech support, design, and engineering. I was struck by how unusual I found it to see women in such a context. Though socially and legally completely at the mercy of their male family members, these women had carved out an interesting professional space for themselves, and I took notice. Frugality. Interesting. Our Dutch culture is defined by our relationship with money. We value frugality above anything. My husband, who is neither Dutch nor a designer, often points out that when we're discussing my company's business model, that I should not focus so much on keeping costs low, but on making more money. But as a Dutch person, I give myself strokes whenever I'm frugal. I've since worked on giving myself a pat on the shoulder when I make a good business deal. My husband recently wanted to hire 2 Dutch designers and was shocked by how low their salary demands were, especially given our high tax burden. I tried to explain to him about creative freedom, about the balance with money. He was bewildered. Why does creativity and money need to be a trade-off? Isn't more creativity better for me as a client? I didn't know what to tell him. The last indicator is national pride. I always thought that Dutch designers are not at all nationalistic, being on the left side of the political spectrum, but I've changed my mind over the years. While selling our work abroad, as a Dutch design agency, we can lift ourselves up from the reputation that the entire sector has built for us. Dutch design, Dutch design. I often use the reputation of that Dutch design as a way to explain to Koreans, Saudis, Kenyans, Norwegians what our way of thinking is and why things look the way they look and why they should hire us because we're so great. Only to find that with most people, Dutch design is not on their radar at all. Actually, in my experience, Van Persie, Robben, and Hiddink are by far our biggest cultural ambassadors. It couldn't hurt us to be a little bit more humble sometimes when it comes to Dutch design. And I know that sounds hypocritical from someone whose CV is covered in roles at the Association of Dutch Designers and the Dutch Design Awards. I'm merely mentioning it for those who want to avoid the embarrassment that I have felt when a boardroom stared back at me with blank eyes at the mention of Dutch design being world famous. Apparently, we're not exactly German engineering yet. You don't really know what your culture is until you've lived and worked in another. You don't know how Dutch you are until you spend a weekend with a group of Italians. There's such a wealth of different approaches to life and work that we can all learn from. I can recommend, if you haven't done so, to study or work abroad for at least a year, to face head-on the baffling, funny, extraordinary differences and commonalities between the people out there in the world. It will make you a better person. It'll make you a better designer, a better agency employee, or an agency boss. While working abroad, you get to investigate the cultural norms that you've been programmed with. And who knows, maybe you will deprogram some of the norms instilled by the Dutch design culture that on reflection, maybe you don't care for so much.
An applause for Anne Miltenburg. What a wonderful, another different perspective on what Dutch design culture is, can be, or wants to be, or isn't quite yet still. I want to thank all the guests that were here tonight, and also Anne in Kenya. I also want to thank you for being here and for listening and seeing all these different perspectives on what our culture is all about, what graphic design is all about. I also want to take you to the autumn, where our second edition will be. So please check out our website somewhere in September to see when our second edition is. Just want to quickly look ahead to the 16th of June, where there is this great exhibition on modernism in print by the Bijzondere Collecties from the University of Amsterdam. I think it runs from the 16th of June until the 1st of October. Make sure to check that out. Also, you have the opportunity to, if you want to, pay as you like to contribute an amount for these kind of evenings. Pakhuis Zwijger makes these kind of programs accessible for everyone and free. But we often hear from the people that join us that they feel like contributing something to express their value for the program. That is now available at the Pay As You Like poll that you will find directly at the entrance. Now, does anyone know what Ajax is doing? 2-0. 2-0. Okay. Well, we can check that out on the screen now. Probably in the cafe they will be live streaming already. And I would love for you to stay and hang out in the cafe and talk a bit more, because there wasn't a lot of chance for you guys to interact, but I think now would be the perfect time with a beer or a drink. Thank you so much and have a great evening.